Where is everybody here? I got comments and I'm already on? What? Oh, I should have brought my glasses in here, Carol.
Principles for success in 30 minutes. It's
Um,
entertaining.
Okay, so here's the deal. Hey, everybody. I haven't come on in a few days. Anybody that saw my last video noticed I got my hair cut right in the middle of it? I couldn't help it. I had my appointment scheduled. And I had to get Lennon's haircut too, so I said, oh man, there's not gonna be any continuity with this. And people know, I was like, yeah, people aren't gonna notice. There's like 20 comments. Thank you, Carol. Let's see here. I think this is the one that I can see with.
You should wear both.
I'll put both on? Yeah, okay, here we go, hold on. No, that's not good. That doesn't work. Do I look any smarter? And no one's commenting, so, okay, and I've lost 16 pounds already, so I'm going, it's tough right now. I'm about 179. I gotta lose about 20 more pounds. Anyway, so those of you that are whining about my Coldplay video, stop whining, okay? I don't do videos. Everybody that wants to hear Pantera, I'm gonna do a Pantera video too. But somebody complained about do some Pantera, and I said I just moved Pantera to the back of the list. They were gonna be my next video. And everybody's been bugging me outside of here about Guns N' Roses. So I'm taking Guns N' Roses suggestions, but don't do it in the live stream here. You can put it in the comments later or something, but what Guns N' Roses song? Something off the first record though. So my brother was like, why haven't you done Guns N' Roses yet? I said, I don't know. But I actually just got an amp, a Silver Jubilee Marshall. My first amp I've bought in, oh God, 10 years or something. I bought a used Silver Jubilee just to do my my Guns N' Roses video. So, okay, what's up, everybody? Hold on, I can't see anything. I gotta clean my glasses here. Okay, we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about modal interchange. God, I got to look through this. This looks really weird. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. This will be a review for some of you people, but I know there's a lot of new people on here over the last few months. And before I get started, first of all, there's a sale on the Beato book. You know how I do it. The code is, what is the code, Carol? RB864, 20% off. Today only, one day. Get it while you can. And before I get started, I want to introduce somebody that is actually the most important person, other than my wife and kids, and Carol, that the reason that I'm actually standing here talking to you, the actual reason, Doug, come up here. Okay, this is my old college roommate, Doug Sandberg. Okay, Doug is here. We just went out to lunch. Now, so here's the deal. So Doug and I were roommates junior year of college. You guys, some of you know Smitty because we've talked to Smitty and Smitty's been on before. He was my roommate sophomore year. So Doug and I lived together. And Doug is the person I called when I was rolling through Atlanta. I called him. I hadn't talked to you in years, right?
Years.
And I called him. It was about 11 o'clock. I stopped at Towered Records here and I say, Doug, it's Rick. Payphone. This is 1994. I said, I'm in town. He said, what are you doing in town? I said, I'm passing through going to Austin. I'm moving to Austin. I just stopped here. I want to see if you're free for lunch. And he said, I said, where are you located? He said, you see that black building over there? It was what, 3-minute drive, right?
Not even
3-minute drive, probably about 400 yards away. He says, my office is in that building. Doug's a lawyer here. So much smarter than me. So I get in my car, drive over there, park. I go up to his office and he says, I got a gig for you tonight. And I was like, what? I'm not staying tonight. He goes, no, you got to stay. You're playing bass, honey. My friend Fran is hiring you to play bass. He needs a bass player for tonight. And you have a rehearsal at 2 o'clock. So we got to eat lunch fast so you can drive to College Park for rehearsal.
That's exactly right. Fran and I used to play gigs together, and I hadn't played with him in a while. And I knew he was getting all these gigs together, and he needed somebody good. He'd never played with anybody as good as Rick. So it was light bulb, serendipitous that Rick called me when he did. I called Fran. Fran didn't hesitate. Yeah, tell him to come right down.
But Doug told him to get Rick to stay.
I did. I did.
So-
I told him, got to keep him in Atlanta.
So when I got down there, Fran says, "Oh, why don't you move your stuff into? I have an empty room here." It was a house with all musicians that he lived in.
Exactly.
Why don't you move all your stuff in here? And I was like, "Why do I want to do that? I'm leaving tomorrow."
No,
Oh,
you're
it'll be
not.
safer in here. And then he hired me for about 10 gigs in a row for the
I think
next
you
10
worked.
days.
You worked for weeks right after.
Yeah.
You didn't. I didn't see you or hear from you. You were working.
Yeah. And we over lunch, we realized that Doug, I was so broke back then that Doug hired me to paint this fence at his house.
I had forgotten about that, which is funny now.
So this is how I worked doing stuff. I worked at Blockbuster Video downtown.
Oh.
And I would do odd jobs before I started teaching guitar lessons until I got enough students. I would do odd jobs like paint Doug's fence. So there you go.
Isn't that
I'm
crazy?
here. I have my kids. I have this channel, my wife, everything because of Doug.
Yeah, well, I don't take that much credit, but I'm happy he stayed in Atlanta, and obviously, it's funny that he was painting my fence, because look at him now. He's a genius. I knew it back in college.
Doug always tells the story.
Oh yeah, when you talk about people who are dedicated, I played guitar and I played some with Rick, but not
We used to do duos together.
duos and stuff like
Doug
that.
is a great singer.
And we had a lot of fun, but the amount of dedication it takes to get to Rick's level is significant. And I always tell the story when people say, "Well, how good do you have to be?" Well, I remember going out on a Saturday. This is a very typical story, but I had a big JVC boombox. Remember that thing?
Oh, yeah.
And it took cassettes, and you were listening to Miles Davis solos or whatever. And it was about 10 in the morning, and I said, "Well, I'll be home tonight." And he said, "Do you mind if I use the boombox?" I was like, "Of course." So
I couldn't afford a boombox.
he's sitting in the middle of the living room that we had with his chair in front of the cassette player, and he's listening to his solo, and he's transposing it on his guitar.
Transcribing, yeah.
Transcribing onto the guitar. And I'm like, "Okay, I'll see you later." So I come home at like 11 at night, and Rick has not moved from that spot. He's in the exact same position. He's been doing it, like 11 hours or something, like 12
Yeah.
hours. And I remember asking you, "Dude, have you even eaten today?" And do you remember what you said? He looks at me, he goes, "Oh, I guess I forgot to eat." And that's a very typical story.
I was skinny back then.
Yeah, well, you were skinny, but you played constantly. And that's how you get good. And he was consumed with it, and obviously all these years later, it's paid off.
So Doug came over, we had lunch, and he showed me his Sir guitar, which is amazing, and his divided by 13 combo amp, which sounds phenomenal. We talked about divided by 13 in my last video with Rhett and Dave. We were talking about divided by 13 amps. And it was pretty sweet. Anyway, so Doug Sandberg, my main man, Doug.
Good to see you guys.
You too. Doug's gonna sit and watch.
I'm gonna watch.
While I talk about modal interchange here. Okay, so you guys all know the modes of the major scale, or some of you do, some of you don't. So here's the deal. The one thing to do that you have to understand are what are the important notes of the mode. Like I said, it's gonna be review for a lot of you here, but I'm gonna talk about it. All these numbers, once again, just mean what the notes are in relation to a major scale. For example, Dorian, you flat the third and you flat the seventh. Phrygian, you flat the 2, 3, 6, and 7. Lydian, you sharp the 4. Mixed Lydian, you flat the 7. Aeolian, you flat the 3rd, 6, and 7. Locrian, you flat the 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? Now, in order to understand modal interchange, you have to understand what notes are the important notes of the mode that give it the sound. For Lydian, the sound is the sharp 4. That's what differentiates it from Ionian and from Mixolydian. There are 3 major chords in a major key: the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. The 1 chord goes with Ionian, the 4 chord goes with the 4th mode, Lydian, and the 5 chord goes with the 5th mode, Mixolydian. These are called the major type modes from the major scale. Okay? So you'd have a major 7th, dominant 7th here. This is a dominant 7th because it's a flat 7. So the notes in these scales that are different than the notes of the major scale. For example, here, Mixolydian has the flat 7. That is the only note that separates it from the major scale. Okay, so that note's very important. Well, what other note's important? The third's important because it defines the quality of the chord, okay? So the thirds are all going to be important in here, and every one of these. The fifths will be important in some of them, okay? In Dorian, what notes are important? Well, the third is important because it states that it's a minor mode, but the sixth is important because the sixth is a characteristic that the other minor modes, which fall on 2, 3, and 6, the second scale degree, the third scale degree, and the sixth scale degree, are the minor chords, and those modes are the minor modes. You also have the seventh mode, which is Locrian, okay, but that's for half diminished chords or for diminished triads. Okay, so Dorian has the natural 6. Aeolian, down here, that's the next one, that's got the flat third, and it's got the flat 6. So that's an important note. That's a note that defines the sound of the mode. Phrygian, okay, well, Phrygian has a flat 2. There are 2 modes with flat 2s in the major scale, modes of the major scale, Phrygian and Locrian. The difference between Phrygian and Locrian is that Phrygian has a natural 5th. So that note actually defines it in relation, or defines it and separates it from Locrian. So Locrian down here has the flat 2, has the flat 5th. Now this has, these two have flat 6s, right? The Aeolian and Locrian. This has a flat 6 Phrygian. There's only one of the minor modes that does not have a flat 6. So these are the defining notes. Okay, so Lydian has the third, major scale has the third, and it has the major 7th. Okay, that's an important note. So all these thirds are important too, because once again, it gives you the quality of the chord. Locrian, that third is important. The fifth, actually, when you start using jazz voicings, those are the first notes that you actually leave out if you're doing arrangements, things like that. If you're doing jazz chord voicings, if you ever look at jazz chord voicings, this is actually instructive here. I got my guitar here. So when you see chords, here I'm going to lower this. Here we go. I got it. Carol, I'll show you this. What did I miss, Rick? You missed the whole thing. You just rewind it. So a chord like a G13 chord here. Well, what notes do we have in this chord? This is like a common jazz voice. So you have the root, the flat 7, the third, and the 13th. What are we leaving out? We're leaving the 5th out, right? So this is on all these jazz voicings, what about like a simple major 7th voicing here? Well, the major 7th chord here, we do have the 5th in here. We got 1, 7, 3, and 5. But really, you can get the sound of the chord by going like that. You don't even need that 5th in there. Instead of the 5th, you can put the sharp 11, you can put the 6th in there. So voicings like this, right? Minor 7, A minor 7, 1, flat 7, flat 3, and 5th. But really, you can state the sound with the 1, the flat 7, and the flat 3rd. That'll give you the sound of a minor 7, okay? So that's one of the principles in chord voicings for jazz. So let's talk about this then, about actually how you sound these modes, because being able to sound the modes is important for modal interchange, because in order to use it, you have to know how to create those kind of sounds. So if I'm going to take let's say if I'm going to play a Lydian chord, okay, a Lydian sound, I need to have that sharp 4 somewhere. Whether I'm playing a chord like that, right? You ever see anyone tune without a tuner? Old school? Look at that. Probably never even saw that before. People used to tune without tuners in the old days. Okay, this is a G major 7 sharp 4 chord, and it's a sharp 4 because it actually, you can have the 5th in it. That's your Lydian scale, right? Now, if I were to play a Lydian line, that is a G Lydian sound. right? If I were to play an Aeolian sound, okay? An Aeolian sound, I'm going to emphasize the flat 6. Okay, so I got 1, 5, flat 6. There's the sound. Beautiful sound. If I were to play E Aeolian. So that flat 6 there is really important to that sound. If I were to play Mixolydian, the flat 7 is really important to the sound. So I'm going to emphasize it in a different way. That'd be G Mixolydian. There's my Mixolydian sound. So these are ways to state the modes either in linear form or in harmonic form. Harmonic form is playing them as chords. Linear form is playing them as lines, okay? So, but how do you state these things and how do you move between them? Well, that's kind of the tricky part. So the first thing to do is to develop a vocabulary of ideas that outline these sounds by picking the important notes here, okay? So for Lydian, let's say I'm playing G Lydian again. That's all I need to do to state Lydian. Oh. I've got major. There's a beginning of a G Lydian sound. Ooh, that's good. Right there. So the way that I'm using them is actually really important as well. On strong beats, I'm playing those important tones. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my sharp 4. There's your Lydian sound, right? You can do other things with other modes, going beyond this. You can go into things like Lydian augmented, which is a little different sound. That's a different sound. Major 7, sharp 5. That's a great. There's your sharp 5. So, sharp 5. Great sound, right? So I'm taking those really important notes and I'm making sure that I state those notes. You can't just run the scales. If you just run the scales, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really state anything. It's all about the way you use intervals, okay? That's a Lydian augmented sound. As soon as I hear that, I was like, whoa, Whoa, that sounds great. If I were to play a melodic minor sound. Right? There's that sound. That major 7. Right there, it's here. Like the James Bond chord, that's a minor major 7. That's a great sound. You guys recognize that from my video. It's the last chord of James Bond. And I'm stating it with these certain resolution tones in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This note is resolving there, but I have a delayed resolution. Or, okay. There's your sound. All right. So every one of these modes has a particular flavor that involves stating the important notes of it in order to create the sound. Now, there are ways that you can create sounds over certain chords that are a little different. I've talked about this before, like for example, playing Mixolydian or playing Phrygian over a dominant chord. You hear Chick Corea do stuff like this. Ooh, that's kind of sweet, right? That is a great sound. Most people, when they see a dominant chord, right? They don't think of that. Rick DiMiola. Exactly. But I'm playing a Phrygian sound right there. That is really reminiscent. So I've got 1, flat, 2, 4, 5. That's all I'm doing. I'm only using those four notes. It's hard to play. Okay, so that's a different usage of a mode. That's a way to give it more of a Spanish feel, okay, using Phrygian over dominant, okay? You have the Phrygian dominant scale too, or that would be from the melodic, from the harmonic minor, right? So if I'm playing in D harmonic minor, that's, again, a different sound. That sound has the sus4, the flat 9. It's like a sus4, flat 9 sound. Works great on sus chords. Okay, so if you have a, if you're playing the tune Spain, for example, you know, when you're doing a, at the end, when it does that turnaround. And then it goes to the, right, and then it goes to altered. So I played Phrygian on F sharp 7 sus 4. To altered dominant. Now I'm changing scales. Phrygian. Alter. So I went between the two scales. That would be modal mixture, where I'm kind of playing it, where I'm using multiple modes on one chord, or modal interchange. That's the concept. But in order to understand the concept, you have to be able to state the modes in your lines. In your harmonies, it's easy to do it with chords. Anybody can do it with chords. If I'm going to play that chord, that's actually probably a better representation of that mode. Ooh, that's a different sound. That's a Dorian flat 2 sound, which also has more of a... Very, very cool. Okay, I'm gonna look at some questions now. I'm sure you guys have questions. I see the thing flashing here. Carol, got any good questions? There's like 100,000 questions?
Yeah.
1 billion.
1 billion questions,
What's
okay.
the best and worst thing about having you for a roommate?
Did somebody ask that?
Yeah, someone did.
I'm not, don't answer, I won't answer that.
Peter, thank you very much. Everyone, Peter Smart, my good friend. You can tell, Peter, thank you so much. How was your vacation? I hope it was good. Let's catch up. Let's see. Let's see here. Phrygia on the same root of the dominant chord. Yes, Phrygia on the same root as the dominant chord, Chris. So I was playing A dominant or A7 sus4, and I was playing A Phrygian over it, okay? But what are the notes though? Well, you've got the flat 9. You look at it, right? You got Phrygian, you have flat 2, flat 3. That flat 3, I wasn't necessarily playing it in the line, but you can. It gives it a great, great sound. Do you have questions, Carol?
There's a question from Justin.
Yep.
If you start playing a mode from a different scale degree other than the first note, is that a mode within a mode, or do you just think about the important notes?
I just think about all the notes that are within that mode that are all over the neck. It doesn't matter. If you don't think that way, you just get locked into positions. That's the thing about guitar that you don't necessarily have on the piano. When you're playing a G major scale on the piano, a basic fingering of it. Now, obviously, you can finger it any way. You've got one sharp note in it. You have F sharp. When you're playing it, you're going to come across that F sharp in similar ways, but you're going to play different fingers on it depending on what your line is. But you don't really think of it because of the way the piano's laid out. You just kind of see it laid out this way. It makes it a lot easier. On guitar, which is position oriented, you end up getting stuck in these positions when you just need to think of what are the actual notes in the scale, and you're hearing those. You need to be hearing and knowing where those important notes are in each position. What's up, Chris? Good to see you. Carol, what else we got here? We can't hear Carol read the questions. Oh, hey, Don. Carol asked about, wait, what was the question again? That my answer was?
Justin's question.
Justin's question was what again?
If you start playing a mode from a different scale degree.
Oh yeah, if you start playing a mode from a different scale degree, does it what was it again? Does it
Is that a mode?
is it a mode within a mode? No, it's not a mode within a mode. But modes are confusing to people. It's really, you got to think of this as a mode is a subset of a scale. There's two ways of thinking of it. You could say I'm in G Lydian, but let's see. Well, I got F sharp and C sharp in it because C sharp is a sharp 4. Well, see, F sharp and C sharp, that's the key of D major. So I guess I'm playing in D major. No, you're just playing in G Lydian, but they're actually playing the notes of D major.
Got another question, Rick.
Yes.
Can you mix modal interchange with secondary dominant or tritone subs?
Well, you kind of are in a way. It's kind of, they're kind of all the same thing. You have a lot of things that have similar names. It's like I was having this discussion yesterday, a guy that I won't name from Berkeley wrote to me. And he wrote to me and he asked me about a part in a video that I'd done. I didn't even remember where I talked about octave displacement, okay, in the chromatic scale. And he actually asked me if I taught it to Pat Martino. Now, Pat Martino is in his 70s, okay? Pat Martino is one of the greatest. This is guy, dude, like I'm 75 years old and I was Pat Martino's guitar teacher. He's talking about Pat Martino. I was like, no, bro. I didn't teach it to Pat Martino. I figured this out on my own 40 years ago, okay? He's talking about things like that. That's a chromatic scale using octave displacement. I think I did something like that. Okay? So then he writes me back and he says, well, you know, then he asked me about the dominant diminished scale. Dominant diminished scale would be for dominant 7 flat 9. It's a half whole diminished scale. He says, well, I don't call it a dominant diminished scale. And we, you know, people that go to conservatories tend to confuse it and some baloney like that. And I wrote him back and I was pretty in my Rick diplomatic way, which is basically not being diplomatic at all. I said, well, you really have to know things by multiple names. Does it really matter if you're playing super Locrian or diminished whole tone or altered dominant? They're all the same scale, dude. And then I said, I don't need a theory lesson from some dude that is a teacher at Berkeley. Anyway, so I won't name the dude, but he actually sent me this thing about how he thinks about stuff. I'm like, dude, think about it however you want. You can teach your students however you want. Start your own YouTube channel, bro, and teach the things the way you want to know, the way you want to teach them. You need to know all these things. You need to know them. You need to know diminished whole tone. You need to know the altered dominant, super Locrian. So when someone's referring to you, you're like, what are they talking about? It's kind of like if you're playing a GB band in Boston. Well, in New York, they call them club dates. And in other places, Philly, they call them casuals. Well, they're the same thing. They're horrible gigs usually that you make very little money and nobody listens, okay? But they're pretty much, I'm just joking. For any of you that played, I played 1 million GB gigs. I mean, I painted Doug's fence. I do anything for music, okay?
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Cody has a question.
Okay, yes.
When practicing these modes, did you practice them as a major starting on different notes or as a scale on their own? Hope that makes sense.
Great question. Yeah, I actually, honestly, I did. You say tomato, I say tomato. Exactly. I did do that. I actually learned them. The first way I learned modes, I started in G major. First guitar lesson I had was with a guy named, I should write a track called Doug's Fence. I had a guitar teacher named Tom Rizzo, who actually, he's still living. He must be about 70 or so, but I mowed his lawn. He owned a music store called Rizzo's Music, which is now Northfield Music in Rochester, New York. It's in Pittsford, New York. And any of you that are in Pittsford, go there and buy something from Joe Chapone, who's the owner, who's a phenomenal guitar player too. So anyway, so Tom, the first lesson, he's like, I want you to learn these 5 positions of G major. And I didn't know that there were 7 modes. And he said, Ionian, Dorian. He goes, okay, Ionian. He did Dorian here, and then shifted. And he had all those notes and all the available notes. But then he said he did Phrygian / Lydian. So that encompassed the 2 modes because there's only a half step between them. So they're basically in the same position. He did Mixolydian up here. Then he did Aeolian, and then he did Locrian, Ionian up here because Locrian and Ionian are right in the same position, right? So he thought of it in 5 positions. And that's how I first learned it. He didn't talk about what important notes were there. What thing was, learn where all the notes are first. Then you can figure out these sounds. Then he taught me about arpeggios. And once I learned about arpeggios, he said arpeggios are just a chord played as single notes. And he said that's what gives the sound of the chord is the arpeggio. So if you play this, that is a G major 7 arpeggio. And it sounds just like that, G major 7. That gives you the sound. That gives you the sound of a dominant chord, right? Well, I didn't know that there were sounds of modes. I didn't know about, if you play that would be an Aeolian sound, because I didn't actually play lines like that till I got into college. That would be an Aeolian sound, or a minor with a flat 6. That's a great sound, right? That is an Aeolian sound. It can only be that because I'm stating the root there. That's an Aeolian sound. Oh, great sound. I love that. Okay, so that's a modal sound. So you've got your modal arpeggios too, but they're not necessarily as clear what to do. You pick and choose what notes to use out of those scales, but you want to emphasize those notes that are different, which are the notes that are circled. That's what gives you the sound of modes. Now, any of you that have watched my channel from the beginning know I have 490 videos, okay? I've made videos on every single mode that you can imagine. I've done videos where I did compositions that did all the modes of the major scale, all the modes of the melodic minor, all the modes of the harmonic minor, all the modes of the harmonic major, all the modes of the double harmonic major. I've done videos on the tonic diminished scale, the dominant diminished scale, the augmented scale, the whole tone scale. I've done videos on when I say every mode of the melodic minor, Dorian flat 2, Lydian augmented, mixed Lydian sharp 11, mixed Lydian flat 6, low Korean natural 6, alter dominant, super low Korean, diminished whole tones, whatever you want to call that. I did all the modes on the harmonic minor scale. I did videos on each individual mode. You need to go back and watch some of those. Nobody ever goes back and watches those, but you should. Anyways, Beato book is on sale. 20% off for 1 day. The code is what, Carol?
RB864.
RB864, 20% off.
You have anything on
Boom.
face painting?
On face painting? No.
Fence painting.
Oh, fence painting, yes.
Any videos on?
I was a good painter.
You're excellent.
Right, Doug?
Excellent painter.
I had to remind Doug that I did that, but Doug's like, hey, if you need to make some extra money, I need somebody to come paint my fence. I was like, dude, I'll come paint your fence, no problem. I painted Doug's fence. That is so great. I love that. Anything for music, whatever you need to do, right? That's what it's all about. Don't get carpal tunnel, somebody says. Exactly. You guys are awesome. Watch my Coldplay video and don't be a snob, all you flat tours. When I say flat tours, you're all you genters. But I have a new gent video coming out tomorrow that's going to be great. I'm working on it today. Did you wax off? I waxed off. Okay, everybody, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. We're getting close to 400,000. We're gonna have a big party at 400,000. Thanks. Leave questions and tell me what Guns N' Roses song you want me to do. I'll talk to you later.